This is a Sports Catastrophe production. Hey there, Heather Ho, there's Jeff Goddard, and welcome you to another Sports Catastrophe Birthday Boy. And the birthday boy today, on September the 19th, is a English soccer goalie icon who was an English international for 75 games for England, having the second most appearances as a goalie in England soccer history. Peter Shilton. He was even given an MBE for services to soccer. He played from 1981 to 2004 as a goalie, but was known for his time at Arsenal, because in the 90s and early 2000s, he was both Arsenal's number one and England's number one, winning 3 league championships with Arsenal, 4 FA Cups, and the League Cup and the Cup Winners' Cup in '94. During this time, he would play for England at World Cup '98 and 2002 and Euro '96 with 2000. He also played with Man City, Peterborough, Birmingham City, and QPR. He's known for a few great moments. Anyway, he's 59 years old today. He is David Seaman. So David Seaman came from Rotherham in Yorkshire. At age 18, he actually went up to 4th Division club Peterborough for £4,000. And then 2 years later, Birmingham City, who were in the 2nd division, the 2nd tier, wanted to pay for $100,000 for his services, and were promoted to the top division, but were relegated the next season. Seaman stayed in top division with QPR, Queen's Park Rangers. QPR played on a plastic pitch. I did not know that. But anyway, England would call him up for the first time in 1988. So anyway, so he played for QPR. And then Arsenal said, you know what? We might need him and all that. They won the league in 1989 on a final day win over rivals Liverpool. And Arsenal wanted David Seaman to give up their keeper, John Lukic, the opposite way. They couldn't do it. As soon as the season ended and clubs were allowed to buy players again, Arsenal came back for Seaman and took 1.3 million British pounds, the record for goalie, being the agreed fee. Lukic, who was actually popular, actually left for Leeds, which was shocking. So anyway, Seaman's time at Arsenal was where Arsenal did well. He played every one of the 38-game season in the 1st division. This was before the Premier League started up a couple years later. But he played, and Arsenal got the league title. Arsenal would win the FA Cup and League Cup in '93. Now, the difference between the FA Cup and the League Cup is that the FA Cup, you get lots of teams. You get like 600 plus clubs aiming for one trophy. Whereas the League Cup, it's only limited to the first, 3 or 4 tiers of British soccer. Anyway, Arsenal then won the Cup Winners' Cup, which meant that every team that won their domestic cup, not domestic league, but the cup, would play in a European type competition. Arsenal was doing pretty well for himself. In '95, Arsenal was trying to become the first team ever to retain the Cup Winners' Cup, as they were allowed to compete in the Cup Winners' Cup after winning the previous thing. And Seaman looked pretty good. Playing with 2 cracked ribs, he actually took care of Arsenal by making 3 penalty saves in the shootout against Sampdoria. It was the final against Real Zaragoza at the Parc des Princes in Paris. And it was close, but in extra time, Naeem, who used to play for Tottenham, used to play in the Premier League, scored from a 40-yard near the halfway line. against Seaman, and it was a shocking result that Seaman botched it. It didn't help me. Well, anyway, David Seaman did his job, but Arsenal could not win that trophy. And let's not forget Naeem from the halfway line. Naeem. Anyway, after George Graham got sacked, Arsene Wagner was in August '96, and he said Seaman was highly ranked in his thing and helped, and with his manager's confidence, Seaman helped Arsenal win the Premier League and FA Cup, which was pretty good. Seaman played in every one of the Premier matches in '99, and they almost got the Premier League. They lost by 1 point, and in the FA Cup semifinals to the same team, Manchester United. Man, you had that treble, winning the league, the domestic league, the domestic cup, and the European Cup. But as is, Arsenal can't believe their luck. Anyway, Arsenal got to the UEFA Cup final in 2000, but lost to Galatasaray on penalties. But Seaman helped Arsenal win the Premier League and FA Cup again for a second double. Seaman, of course, got injured quite a bit, and Arsenal had to have 2 other goalies come in. The 2003 season with Arsenal ended on a high note. I mean, it was huge and all that. Arsenal was up 1-0 on Sheffield United in the 2003 semi-finals when it happened. Sheffield's Paul Pescisolito, who was Canadian, thought he had a header towards an apparent open goal from 6 yards out, with Seaman stranded at the near post. However, Seaman leapt sideways and backwards, managing to stick his right arm behind him and scoop the ball away from his goal, and the opposing players ready to pounce on the rebound. It was actually Seaman's 1,000th career professional game. Unfortunately, well, even though that save was one of the best FA Cup moments of all time, top 10, easily, he did lose the final. No, he did help Arsenal win the title, the 2003 FA Cup against Southampton. I thought they lost. Anyway, that's what I heard someone say. But anyway, Seaman would have 9 trophies with Arsenal. All that. He played in goal for Arsenal more times than anyone else, and he was actually second in Premier League appearances for Arsenal with 325, behind only Ray Parlour. Arsenal released him, which was shocking. David Seaman actually ended up joining up at Man City in 2003. Now, this is not the same Man City that has been dominating Premier League nowadays. This was a team that would bounce between first and second division a while. Anyway, Seaman was injured and retired at age 40. And he said that David James would be the new successor at Man City, even though David James had some terrible England performances. Anyway, Walsall in 2005 wanted David Seaman to play in the FA Cup match because they lost their 2 first-choice keepers. Seaman turned down this offer because it would have constituted a breach in his retirement insurance payout for his recurring shoulder injury. So, yeah, Walsall was desperate. So anyway, Seaman would play for England, be England's #1 goalie for 15 years. Well, he was the 3rd choice goalie in 1990, behind the great Peter Shilton and the not-so-great Chris Woods. Unfortunately, he got injured, and the 3rd choice goalie went to Dave Bezzett. Although I have to say, did they really need a 3rd goalie? They didn't. Seaman was not selected for Euro 92, and only played a few games for England in 94 World Cup qualifying. It was usually Chris Woods in net, but Chris Woods was a disaster. Anyway, Seaman would be the new England number one once Terry Venables was manager, and played every minute in Euro '96. He made a key penalty save against Scotland in the group stages that would have ruined England out. And then in the quarterfinal with England facing Spain scoreless, Seaman made a gigantic save off of Miguel Angel Nadal. I don't think he was related to Rafa Nadal, but anyway, knocked Spain out of the tournament. And that was for a while until the 2018 World Cup, the only major time in a major tournament that England actually won a penalty shootout, because England's known for fumbling penalty shootouts, especially the Euros in 2021. Fuck. England would then lose the penalties to Germany, thanks to Gareth Southgate's miss. He was named player of the tournament. Anyway, he would still be the first choice for the '98 World Cup. He did pretty well. Unfortunately, Seaman and England would lose to Argentina in the round of 16 on penalties. He was selected to be the main guy for Euro 2000. He started against Portugal and Germany. Unfortunately, he injured himself, and Nigel Martin came into the game. And that would be costly. Seaman's injury would be costly because England shockingly lost to Romania and got knocked out of the first round. It was like, what the hell? If only David Seaman was not hurt. Anyway, Seaman played every game for the 2002 British squad in the World Cup, getting to the quarterfinals against Brazil. They were actually up 1-0, and it was like, oh my God, England's going to win over Brazil, and they might win the tournament. Nope. It was just terrible and all that. Ronaldinho had a long-range free kick, and for some reason, the ball floated over David Seaman's reach and into the top left corner of the net, giving Brazil the 2-1 win. The ball went over his head, as the great John Watson said. He did blame himself, Seaman did, for that mistake, and people wouldn't let him forget about it. He was still England's first choice goalie, but then he had a lot of press criticism. Seaman was dropped for David James. Remember, he was pretty good and all that. So, yeah, he did pretty good and all that. He was still pretty good and all that. Yeah. So, anyway, Seaman wanted to help coach goalies, but he would have needed a badge and outfield coaching. He was popular for chat shows and all that. In fact, kind of close to the end of his career, he was actually named team captain in the famous sports quiz show in the UK. They think it's all over. When Gary Lineker left the show, mostly because of the banter between him and Jonathan Ross and a lot of things. So with Gary Lineker and, for that matter, David Gower gone, the show went in a downhill. So they gave David Seaman the chance to be team captain, which is funny because one of his regular teammates, who never missed a Think It's All Over episode, Roy McGraw, was a giant Arsenal fan, and he was a little bit unhappy that, he loves David Seaman, his childhood idol, but David Seaman did give up that goal to Naeem and then to Brazil. But then after a season, he got booted for Ian Wright, another Arsenal player. Anyway, he took part in strictly ice dancing, Strictly Come Dancing on Ice. He replaced Paul Gascoigne. And even though there was 8 days of preparation, Seaman and his professional partner won the competition. So that was shocking. In 2005, he actually cut off his trademark ponytail, which actually cost him a deal with L'Oreal. He would be part of Dancing on Ice in 2006 and took 4th place. So yeah, David Seaman knew what he was doing and all of that. So anyway, Seaman had a first marriage that lasted 10 years and then married a second wife lasting 11 years, but were divorced. And he's married his third wife. So he has 4 children. So yeah, so he played for Leeds, Peterborough, Birmingham, QPR, Arsenal, and Man City in his career. 958 games in the Premier League. Well, League One First Division / Premier League. And for England, he played 75 times for them. So he's done, 4 FA Cups, 2 Premier Leagues, the First Division, 91, kind of like the Premier League. The Cup Winners' Cup, yeah, he was part of the team of the decade for the first 10 years of the Premier League. He was safe as hands, but if only he had done better in the 2002 World Cup. Ick. Anyway, I'm Jeff Diamond. I do.